Joosub joins us. He is the Vodacom CEO. Welcome to What's Next, Shameel. No stranger to my broadband. It's really, really nice to see you again, Shameel. And, you know, I can't have discussions about Spectrum with you anymore. You must be a very, very happy man.
Kind of, Aki. We still got two court cases, going, or one court case going. So, yes, I think, it's been a long journey. It's been 18 years since we last got allocated spectrum. So, it's something that I've been working on a lot for the last 10 years. So, yes, it's a kind of a milestone.
Well, we're going to talk about the spectrum in just a moment, because I know that's something that you're very passionate about. But I mean, Vodacom has been investing big money. I mean, you've just invested a billion rand in your network in the Western Cape over the last year. That's a lot of money, and you've also spent 450 million rand on your network in Mpumalanga. How is Vodacom's 5G rollout going so far? I know you were in most of the metros and you guys were rolling out aggressively. Where are your focus areas, and how's that 5G rollout going?
Yeah, I think. Look, this past year we've invested more than 11 billion rand into the network. The Western Cape and Mpumalanga are some examples of that. But of course, we've invested in every province. We've taken more coverage to rural areas. We've added more capacity and speed, and so on to the network. We've improved the IT and of course the internal systems. We launched Vodapay. So there's quite a bit that is actually investment that's gone into our networks and IT over the last year. 5G is of course one of those priorities. I think a big part of 5G will be now that you've got the actual spectrum that you can accelerate. So we continue to grow out the 5G footprint. But I think, now that we'll have spectrum, it will give us the chance to accelerate it a lot more. At the same time, of course, it's important that the device ecosystem is there as well, because you don't want to go too far and you don't want to cover the entire country in the laser devices, because what happens is the equipment changes as well. So you have to basically make sure that you're rolling it out a bit ahead of the demand, so to speak, but you don't want to go and cover the entire country and not have demand.
Fantastic. I mean, there's obviously big obstacles, right? When you are rolling out the kind of network that Vodacom has across the country. I mean, we're not a small country. What would you say those biggest obstacles are in terms of rolling out of your network and just expanding and adding more capacity to your services? Can't be easy, Shameel.
No, it isn't. And I mean, one of the biggest constraints, over the last couple of years, in the cost of producing a gig of data has been access to spectrum. Now, hopefully, once we put that behind us, of course, it's come at a big cost. But now they've spent the money, 5.7 billion on spectrum, and have spectrum that can set us up properly for the next 20 years, than to not have it. So, I think so that's one of the big inputs. The second big constraint, I would say, is power. And the power issues, I think often like customers don't really appreciate that networks run on power. So if the power goes up, what do most people do? They go to their iPads and laptops and phones and so on, and they continue to watch possibly on the mobile network. The issue with that, though, is that it does require power. So the sites require power. So when the power is going, so what we've been investing quite heavily in is into batteries. So we spent like R1 billion a year over the last 2 years just in batteries. And that's money that we would have deployed in furthering 5G or furthering more coverage or speeds or capacity and so on. So it does have its limitations, and that's putting a lot of strain because you've got 15,000 sites. So you're going to make sure that you've got enough batteries in it. Then the batteries get stolen. So that's a big issue as well. So now we're having to go to armed response in the sites to be able to reduce the theft, so that we can keep the uptime up. At the same time, we're having to add more and more battery packs because 4 hours is not enough. Now you have to have 6 to 8 hours of battery standby. So that's a huge cost that affects network availability. And often people see it as oh, but my coverage is bad, but they don't realize that the site can only last for so many hours. So especially when you have rolling blackouts, or remember the issues on power is not just Eskom, it's also local Munich power issues as well. Or again, cables getting stolen. So there's a number of different issues that affect power. So I'd say that's one of the big constraints. And then of course, site approvals, just getting site approvals in some areas. The very clients that complain and don't want to approve a base station. So, you know, you do need the connectivity. Soon we'll be able to, you know, beam the signal down from space, then we won't need sites. But, you know, before that, we still do need sites.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, Shameel, let's talk about that spectrum. I mean, it's been a historic spectrum. I mean, you and I have been talking about it in every single interview. It's been a great frustration, but it's been concluded. Vodacom has a great plan in action. But just before we talk about spectrum, just in layman's terms, can you just explain to people what is the spectrum and why this has been so historical and why this is so important for Vodacom?
Yeah, I mean, look, basically your radios that are used on base stations that allows the phones to communicate essentially operates on radio waves. So you basically need the spectrum. If you have spectrum on the site, or rather when capacity gets filled up, so you add radios. Now, the most efficient way to basically get more out of the site as the capacity builds up is to do it through spectrum. But if you don't have spectrum, you're going to add more radios. And then eventually you run out of radios, which means you're going to build more sites. That becomes very, very expensive because you're going to add another site very close to the site that you already have. And so that becomes quite problematic.
Okay.
So that's really the big impact. So now when you get spectrum, it makes it more efficient for you to deploy capacity on that particular site. And also to improve coverage, because the lower band spectrums give you better indoor coverage as well. So for instance, we've got 700 megahertz of spectrum that will allow you to have better indoor penetration.
Okay, so it's an analogy. I think you once told me about this analogy. If you can imagine the highway from here to Pretoria, where you've got 5 lanes of traffic in each direction, you've now added an additional 10 lanes of traffic. Is that a fair analogy, that, you know, the cars can now move a lot freely and you can increase the speed, and the travel distance between Joburg and Pretoria will be a lot faster? So you've got the spectrum now, Shameel. What is Vodacom going to do with it?
So basically now it will be a couple of fold, right? One will be your 5G rollout. Secondly, will be improving coverage and quality on the existing network, so that we can pick up coverage holes, those type of things, but make it more efficient. So what we've got to now do is you buy new radios, you're picking up new. So you basically you have to modernize the network to be able to cater for all this new equipment. So you're putting in new equipment that will essentially lead to a better experience, both in coverage, quality, and of course access to new technologies like 5G. And why you should care about 5G is because it basically, you know, can give you can offer much bigger bundles now. And you can also go closer to unlimited or to unlimited type offerings, which is what wasn't practical on a mobile network before, but now you can do it on a 5G network.
So users will see quite a significant improvement in many aspects. I mean, you've already got a fantastic network, but I imagine with more 5G and you know, adding more capacity, it just will improve things all around. How soon before people start seeing marked improvements when you're starting to use the spectrum? I mean, how far away are you from actually putting it to use?
So remember, part of it's going to be, when does the spectrum actually become available? So
Yes.
Not all of it is available immediately. Firstly, July is when we actually have availability to the spectrum. So that's one part. The second part is that the digital migration will have to have been completed so that we can get full access to the spectrum. So in some cases, we can deploy some of the spectrum faster. In others, it's a little bit of a wait and see. And then, of course, you've got to put the equipment in. And so it will be an improvement almost side by side.
Right.
And of course, we'll try to do it as rapidly as possible. but you've got 15,000 sites. So it's, it's also it's gonna take some time to roll it out to everyone.
Well, it's going to be certainly very exciting. And I mean, I love your vision that you have. I mean, I remember talking to you about cellular stuff when you were still at Vodafone in Spain. And we were at Mobile World the 1 year where I met you, and we were just, you were talking about, what they're doing on their network. So it's so exciting to see how this industry has evolved. I mean, when we met all those years ago, I don't even think LTE was around. It was like still 3G. So when you look at the cellular industry over the next few years, I mean, what's your outlook? You've had a very good 2 years up to now. I think COVID has seen really increased numbers, and this hybrid workforce certainly doesn't seem to be going away. It's going to continue this way, and it's been good for Vodacom in many ways, but it's also been challenging, let's be honest. But what do you see happening over the next few years in the cellular industry, and what would you like to see personally, Shameel?
So I think, Aki, the world is changing. It's all about data. And the consumption of data, whether that be mobile or fixed, and essentially what's happening is data is going to be much more ingrained into our lives. So if you look at the metaverse and what's happening, and then I'll be having in future. I'm not sure where I'm going to be having an interview with Aki or Aki's avatar. So that's. So I mean, as crazy as it sounds, it was a big theme at Barcelona this year, right? In terms of basically where the technology is going. So I think it's quite exciting in that regard. But if you look at, I mean, today customers are spending just under 3 gigs per customer per month, right? You can see that growing tenfold over the next couple of years, so that people are consuming a lot more data as the need for data becomes more ingrained. So everything online, working from home, educating from home, but also, more entertainment goes further than that. So, whether it's, gaming and so on, but also things like you'll be able to visit, the Louvre, but visit it virtually. So these are the type of things, or go and visit a concert and be there virtually. So there's so many different things that are going to evolve and change. And it's going to require low latency, faster speeds, more capacity. So the way we think about it is that some of the enablers of a digital transformation that the world is undergoing at the moment. Part of it is you need the basics, which I call electricity and water. But one of the underlying infrastructure, of course, you still need, transport and railways and all the different infrastructure. One of the important infrastructures going forward, and that will become more prominent as the years go by, is the need for proper broadband networks, both mobile and fixed. And that's why, the CIVH deal is, if you like, and exposure to fiber. So it will come from fiber, it will come from mobile, but it will also come from space. And that's why you'll see we've done a partnership with AST, where we're going to start doing trials in Kenya at the moment, where we beam signal down from space. And so, that connectivity is going to play a big role going forward. And I think the need for it is going to become a lot more: faster speeds, lower latencies, and I think whole ecosystems are going to be built up. We saw that, and Aki, when you've been around as long as you and I have, in the transformation from 3G and what that brought. We saw what 4G brought, and the world before 4G, the app world wasn't there, and how the app world and everything is apps today. And now, what 5G will bring with the low latency and the new industries that will come at the back of that, I think, will be very exciting, from telemedicine to, the use of AR and VR in various different scenarios.
Indeed, it's certainly very exciting. I mean, this chunk of the spectrum that you've got anymore, I guess this is like a layman's question. Will you ever... I imagine you're going to run out of this spectrum as well at some stage, and you're going to need more. I mean, when do you anticipate you needing more spectrum based on your current usage patterns?
So essentially, the spectrum that we've got now will help us, to basically be able to roll out 5G. But as the customers basically are consuming more and more, a lot of it's going to depend on how it grows. But I mean, we're seeing countries now where people are using 30 gigs of data a month, 20 gigs of data a month. So, places like India, China, and even places like the US now. So that consumption is getting a lot bigger. As that grows, you need to put out more infrastructure. Of course, the more spectrum you have, the more capable you are of dealing with that. So that's the one part. So you will need more spectrum as the demand increases. But also technology will evolve. No sooner will 5G be, and we'll be rolling out 5G and covering the country, then 6G will be upon us.
Yes.
Whatever that be. So it will continue to evolve. And the world doesn't stand still, and technology doesn't stand still.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, Shameel, I mean, Vodacom, you guys are going full steam ahead. I mean, I'm looking at your results. I look at your numbers, and it's fantastic to watch. And it's fantastic to watch how Vodacom has evolved from a company that used to provide cellular communication, 15, 20 years ago. You're now providing IoT, you're doing cloud, you're involved with AWS. I mean, Vodacom is a massive beast that's evolving so quickly into so many different businesses, just looking after any kind of communication infrastructure, IT infrastructure of organizations. It's insane. What are your plans for the rest of this year at Vodacom? I mean, we did touch on the spectrum and unlocking more of that value, but what's in your mind? What do you see Vodacom doing for the rest of the year?
I think important part for us is that we're embedding ourselves into the lives of our customers, whether it be a consumer customer or business customer. And a big part of that is, for us, it's mobile, fixed wireless, the connectivity part playing a big role, connecting the home. We want to improve the services into the home and make sure that we can create a differentiated customer experience within the home. So that's one. The second part of that is, of course, growing our e-commerce part and embedding ourselves in your life through different means. So you'll see, if you use the VodaPay app today, and the numbers have just been astronomical in terms of the growth that we're seeing in terms of downloads and so on. But basically, being able to, from the time you wake up to your morning coffee, to your gym classes, to paying your bills, to person-to-person money transfers, and so on, is a big part of it. So the next part is now to introduce cash in, cash out into our system and allow people to walk into a store, put money down, convert it into currency. You can do it today by linking your card or transferring money from your bank account, but we're opening it up to a broader audience. Then onboarding more players onto it so that you can have more food options, so you can have more grocery options, so you can have more clothing options, and so on and so on. So it's deepening, or transport options. It's deepening the number of services that are offering. And every week, more and more parties are coming onto the super app. So that's quite exciting. But integrating that with loyalty, integrating that with our customer value management and big data. Today we know 3,200 things about you, Aki, or rather what we do, the computer does. And so, it's generating next best activities. So it knows that you like to go on holiday every December, where you go on holiday, and then you're getting offers, probably around July, August, and so on and so on. So it starts to pick up and learn about your behaviors. And of course, this is all done within GDPR and POPI and so on, so that the customer's information is always protected. But we see this emphasis becoming a lot bigger. And of course, in the enterprise section, it's how do we change the conversation? How do we, firstly, meet your connectivity needs, but how do we take it beyond connectivity? How do we help you to sell more by selling your products through the super app? But how do we also help you to take costs out and make your business more efficient through our IoT.next solutions, as an example, our IoT solutions, or the utilization of our point of sale devices, or our special products that we create for SMEs and so on. So, and then, with our sell through and sell with partnerships, like with AWS, our own data centers and so on. So that's the journey that we're on. And then, of course, centered to all of that is financial services, which is become quite a big business for us. Now, we've got 64 million customers buying a financial service product from us across the continent.
Wow.
And we move $28.5 billion a month through our platform. So, it's the biggest mobile money platform on the continent by a long shot, and essentially, growing exceptionally. And we're now bringing the super app capabilities in. Exciting for us is the introduction of Egypt into the group and the more financial services capabilities that we have. And so, we're building services out of South Africa, out of Kenya, out of Egypt in the future, and also we've created a hub out of Dubai as well.
Gee, Shameel, you've got your hands full, hey? It's a really busy time for you. And just in terms of acquisitions, I know you mentioned Egypt a second ago. Are you? I imagine it's obviously confidential. You can't tell us exactly what, but I guess acquisitions are always on the table, right? I mean, whatever you're going to do to expand the business, I mean, we could well see acquisitions throughout this year from Vodacom.
I think, Aki, more partnerships than acquisitions. I think the acquisitions that we're making, Egypt is a big one for us. And honestly, transformational for the group. Fantastic market, fantastic business, market shares, capabilities. I recently went up and spent some time with the team and met with the Prime Minister and so on. And very, very exciting environment, big on software engineers and IT skills and so on. So very exciting. We want to take our system of advantage, as we call it, to Egypt, but also introduce our financial service platforms into the Egyptian market. And we think it's going to be really, really exciting. And of course, there's the CIVH deal, which takes fiber to the home, fiber to the corporate, fiber to the business. But we are looking to do more fiber deals across the continent, but more in the form of partnerships and bringing on partners to work with us in connecting the various markets that we operate in. Today, we will have 520 million people, populations in the markets that we cover, with over 170 million customers. So a big opportunity for us to cover more people, cover more coverage. We want to take more rural coverage. We're coming up with exciting models and partnerships to take coverage to the far areas of the countries that we operate in. So a big drive for us is living our purpose, which is that we connect people for a better future and giving access to people to that technology. That's a major focus area for us, both mobile and fixed, and also satellite in the future as well. So that's a core part of what we do. And then a second big part of our purpose is financial inclusion. And we want to make it possible for people to lend as little as $1, but invest as little as $1, but be able to pay for anything and everything and to shop from our super apps and from our apps and be able to transact. But merchants to be able to sell their products beyond their geographical area, give them access to funding, our businesses grow. So it is quite a big agenda, but we see that agenda can't just be delivered by ourselves. So we're open to more partnerships and being able to do that in conjunction with other players, like in the case of CIVH, where we're not, we require up to 40%, but happy to partner with the existing shareholders to grow the business.
But Shameel, I mean, you go back to Egypt and you just look at where telecommunications is going, right? I had the privilege of interviewing and chatting to the telecommunications minister of Egypt, and what an impressive man he is, just like understanding the landscape. I think he's got 2 doctorates, if I'm not mistaken. He's a computer scientist. He understands it, but the amount of money that the telecoms industry contributes to the GDP of Egypt is like almost 25%. So you just realize what an integral, important part of any government's portfolio this is this telecommunication world that we're living in, and how important it's going to become, and increasingly more important in the economic growth of any country.
Very much so. And I think that's one of the big things that, as I was saying earlier, it's becoming more and more important to have that underlying infrastructure. And I think in this new digital age, countries will require the infrastructure. And my concern, Aki, is that, you know, Africa has a long way to go, right? Europe is now talking about 1 terabyte speeds per home and covering every home and so on. You know, we have a long way to go in terms of getting that mobile and fixed connectivity to every home, to every person. And I think we're going to have to do that as a continent, as a country, you know, to be able to achieve the success that we're looking for, and to stay competitive in the global environment. And I think for us, we see that onus on us, for every market that we operate in, that it's our responsibility, that we've been given the privilege of a license, and that we need to make sure that we're delivering that connectivity to the people.
Shameel Joosub, Vodacom CEO, it's always good to see you, and thank you very, very much for your time. Really appreciate your insights. We wish you well over the rest of your fast, and we thank you for your time, Shameel, and hope to see you soon in person.
Thank you, Aki.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.